communities. If you need a ride and you're in the Big Bend area, you've got the Uber capability, but you also have the ability of calling 1-800-729-3413. Again, that's 1-800-729-3413, and we will send a transportation asset to pick you up. Again, we need to act on that right now. If you choose to shelter in place, you need to stay put until the storm has passed. I would also encourage you to call somebody and tell them you're sheltering in place. That way there's some type of check and balance there so that we know that you did not evacuate. Again, we don't want you to shelter in place, but if you decide to do that, make sure you call a friend or a loved one outside the area and let them know. But don't forget to call them after to let them know that you're safe. If you hear trees snapping, this is a very, very valid point. We haven't really had an opportunity to talk about this. If you hear trees snapping around your home, treat it like a tornado. At that point in time, get to an interior portion of your home, most likely a bathroom, get as low as you can. If you have some type of protective material, a heavy blanket, a comforter, maybe a very, very small thin mattress, get to that point, put it over the top of yourselves and hunker down there. Treat it just as you would a tornado. You will hear trees snapping. Pine trees snapping sound an awful lot like fireworks or potentially gunshots. So please make sure if you hear that, act immediately. Get to the interior portion of your home, away from glass, most likely a bathroom, and stay there until you hear that sound stop. If, again, for the people in the Tallahassee area, if all of a sudden it goes from catastrophic trees popping to absolutely nothing, that does not mean the storm is over. What that actually means is you're in the eye of the hurricane. All right? Do not go out and survey damage. This eye is projected to be anywhere from 50 miles wide to 20 miles wide. But again, if it's moving at 21 miles an hour and it's a 20-mile wide eye wall, you may have only 30 minutes, 45 minutes before that eye wall collapses right back on you and trees start snapping again. So again, if it goes from horrible and terrible to absolutely nothing, there's a 99% chance that you're in the eye wall. Stay in place. Do not move. We want to make sure you do that. Don't go in outdoors until it's deemed to be safe. If you lose power and are going to be using a generator, as the governor said, we want you to follow our 20-20-20 rule. There's an opportunity to do the last 20, but we want to keep it outdoors, 20 feet away from your home and away from all windows. You're going to wait 20 minutes before you refuel that generator, and then you make sure you keep it on a dry, flat surface, and then invest $20 to get you a carbon monoxide detector and put it inside your home. That'll save your life. Residents needing resources before and after the hurricane can call our state assistance information line at 1-800-342-3557. Again, that's 1-800-342-3557. We have individuals there for English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole speaking. And then also be sure to follow us on X, Instagram at FLSERT, that's at Florida CERT, and then on Facebook at FDEM. And again, Governor, as well as John and Jared, thank you so much for everything you do for the Division of Emergency Management. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Jared.
All right. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership. Thank you, Kevin, for your leadership at the division, General Haas. We've been in very close coordination since this storm formed. We've been coordinating very closely with our law enforcement partners, with the Florida Highway Patrol, and also our industry partners at our seaports, airports, and rail. We have taken extensive efforts to prepare for this storm. As you heard from the governor, we have nearly 2,000 team members working the storm, staging, and preparing to respond. We are really looking at the path of the storm now and preparing our operation for cut and toss, for damage assessment, and for bridge inspection. We're going to be very focused on those coastal bridges as this storm passes through. We want to get them inspected and repaired as quickly as possible so people can move around. In the path of the storm, I-10 and US 98 are two major routes that we're going to be looking at. US 98 obviously has some vulnerabilities along the coast, so we're going to be focused on those. There will potentially be a lot of vegetative debris, a lot of trees down. Those trees can be wrapped in power lines. Please do not get out and explore. It can be dangerous. If you see water on the road, please do not drive through it, especially if it's around a culvert or a bridge. It can be very dangerous to drive through water. We have 120 bridge inspectors on standby. They will deploy immediately as soon as it's safe to do so. We're already beginning to see high wind speeds on the west Gulf Coast of Florida. As you heard from the governor, the closure of Skyway is imminent. And just as a reminder, when wind speeds reach 40 miles per hour or greater, local law enforcement and Florida Highway Patrol usually start to close those bridges. So if you still need to evacuate, please get out while you can move around safely. As the storm passes through, fl511.com is the most reliable place to get information on road closures, detours, etc. We will be updating that website live as the storm passes through. And throughout the night, we've had our 10 traffic management centers monitoring traffic live. We've had our road ranger service patrols on 24/7 operations, and we've been monitoring all of our roads during the evacuations and helping facilitate those evacuations. And we're going to continue to do that. Again, as the storm passes through, please remember there will be a lot of trees down there. Will be a lot of vegetative debris. Do not drive through water. You heard from the governor. Tallahassee Airport, Tampa Airport, St. Pete are all closed. We hope to see those open up as soon as possible after the storm passes through. We have several seaports right now that have closed waterside along the coast, just preparing for the storm. And again, we'll coordinate closely with them and the Coast Guard to open those back up as soon as the storm passes through. Again, thank you, Governor, for your leadership, and we'll continue to work.
Also, as for folks that are in these low-lying areas that could experience major storm surge, electric vehicles, when they have the saltwater intrusion, that has generated fires in the past, and those are very difficult fires to put out. So if you do have one of those, try to get that to higher ground as well, because it does represent a hazard for the safety. And we actually had in Ian, we had homes that were completely fine withstanding a Cat 5 impact, and then got burned down because of the EV that was in the garage and caught fire. So try to avoid that if you can. Again, if you are particularly if you're in northern Florida, I mean, you can leave now. If you're in an evacuation zone, you have time to execute this plan, but that time is really running out very quickly. Listen to wherever you are in Florida, listen to your local officials about whether it has come to the point where you just need to hunker down. And that may be the case in some of the southern parts of Florida that are experiencing more impacts now. As the day goes on up here in North Florida, that is going to be something that they're going to say, because it's going to be very hazardous conditions when you're, and it's not going to be safe to be out on the road. So I want to thank everybody for mobilizing up to this point. We've got a lot of assets, as we always do, available, and we will bring those to bear as soon as the storm passes, and first helping people with life and limb that may be in jeopardy, but then two, restoring the critical services, whether that's transportation or whether that is power, and we have the resources in place to be able to help do that. And with that, I'll take some questions. Yep.
This storm being the third hurricane to hit the financially constrained counties, how much of a strain does that put on state resources to help these people that are struggling to pay for one storm, let alone three?
We've always stepped up and helped fiscally constrained counties in Florida, and we'll continue to do that. I mean, look, we put aside $500 million a year for disaster response. We started that when I became governor, and we're in a very strong fiscal shape now. We believe in utilizing whatever levers available. If I can get money elsewhere, I will do that for the counties. But we're in a good shape to be able to step up and help them. And we'll see. This is not projected to reach a Michael strength, but you never know, right? And but I remember, like Mexico Beach, the debris cost was like $80 million, and their annual budget was like $8 million. Well, that's not going to be something that's going to be feasible. So we know there's going to be need for support for fiscally constrained counties. Kevin and his team have already done a lot to help them on the outset and leading up to the storm, and we'll continue to be a good partner with them on the way back. Yes.
What could you tell locals on what should we expect for the aftermath of Tallahassee? I mean, will Tallahassee look like Tallahassee anymore after this?
Well, look, I think, on the one hand, if you look at the track that we were talking about last night, that was a track that we have not seen in that magnitude hit Tallahassee in anybody's lifetime. And if that were to happen, that there is just going to be a lot of debris. I mean, it is going to push down a lot of trees, and it will cause significant damage. Now, we always prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And as I said at the outset, you have seen the models nudge it more to the east. And if you're on the west side of the storm, the amount of damage is just less than if you're on the east side of the storm. That's just the way these things work. And if you look at the solutions, a lot of the model runs, there's a lot of them that have it more on the Idalia track. I think the NHC's cone, I think they've been on the western side of where all the models are. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but there is a lot of data out there that does want to nudge it east. So in terms of Tallahassee, every model run that nudges it east, if that's the track it takes, that will mean less damage. There's just no question. Anything that moves it west is just going to be more damage. And so we're prepared. I've spoken with the mayor of the city. We've spoken with the county leadership. I've spoken with the sheriff. People are ready. They're taking this seriously. They know that they have the potentially going to be called upon to execute a response that has just not been something that they've been called upon to do. I remember, I wasn't governor, but when they had Helene, that was not something that there was good preparation for on the local level. You had a lot of people that were without power for a long time. It just didn't seem. That is not the way it's being done this time. So I think that from local up, people are taking it really seriously, and we're going to respond accordingly. But this track change is going to make an impact. And if you told me it was going to hit 50 miles east of Tallahassee, then I'd be comfortable saying that the impacts would be less than what the track was yesterday, because it has to be. That's just the way these storms work. Yes.
I'm wondering what the scenario is that you're managing now on the power specifically for the affected Big Bend counties. Are we talking a couple weeks, a month, maybe without power? I mean, just
well, a lot of times it just depends on the extent of the damage. I mean, we had Idalia. We had that was the fastest restoration from a major hurricane in the history of our responses. And part of it is because we had mutual aid with these electrical co-ops and the municipals. Just the way it is. I mean, the private utilities have more manpower, right? So if you're in an area, Florida Power and Light or Duke, they have some of the smaller outfits just don't have as much. So Kevin and his team, we've worked really hard to provide that mutual aid. Now, if you're talking about Tallahassee, the more debris that's there, that could interrupt the ability to get to the power lines. And so we're going to have Jared, we're going to have FDOT, they're going to be helping. I've spoken with the county and the city about making sure they have debris contracts ready to go, but getting the utility workers to the place where they can hook it back up is going to be something that's important. Now, if it's more of an Idalia track, this is like deja vu all over again, right? I mean, we had Idalia, we had Debbie, very similar tracks. If this does nudge east, you're going to have a storm that, maybe it's more powerful than Idalia, maybe it's a little less. We'll see. Idalia reached Cat 4 before landfall, and then it receded to a Cat 3 when it hit landfall. So you could have something that's very similar. So I think there's a lot, but we're going to have over 30,000 linemen that are going to be staged and ready to go. I would note that there are some relatively minor power outages across the state, largely because of these tornadoes that we've seen. Now, those companies, a lot of that's FPL, and they'll get that back on very quickly. But I think the municipal and the rural co-ops, they've really embraced taking mutual aid. They've embraced going in and trying to get the stuff back on as quickly as possible. Now, if there is damage to not just the lines, but the underlying system that can be destroyed in these things, then that makes it because you have to rebuild the system. Now, it didn't happen in Idalia. It did happen in a couple areas in Hurricane Ian right there on the coast. Now, hopefully, there's not a projection that this is going to be as powerful as Ian, but you never know. This is they've got a great runway in the Gulf of Mexico. The water's warm. It's deep right where the storm is now. It could rapidly intensify. So if you have that structural destruction, then you have to rebuild. We did not have to do that in Idalia, And then what Kevin has been dispatching are these flood protection devices around the utility substations. And I think a lot of them have utilized that up here. So they've been able to do, and what that does is, if you have some surge, if you have a flood, it can keep that substation operating, and that makes a huge difference in terms of the power restoration. So we've got huge amounts of assets that are ready to go. The scope of the storm, the path of the storm, is really going to depend on, in terms of the power, will depend on the path and scope of what ends up happening.
Do you know how many substations have that flood control device around it?
I know.
We filled dozens of missions. Cody, I can get you a
Okay. All right. Just curious.
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Duffy.
Sure.
So, with this major hurricane, or it's expected to become a major hurricane, or it was, up to maybe a Category 4, still things up in the air. Why doesn't Leon County have an evacuation order? A lot of people are leaving. They're scared. They're nervous. I know Wakulla does. Franklin, the counties around it do.
Yeah. So, in reference to the question about Leon County specifically and evacuation order, we probably need to fact check that, because I do believe Leon County has an evacuation order right now for low-lying areas and manufactured homes, which makes sense. If you come here, and I'm going to just briefly, if you allow me, Governor, put my local county EM director hat back on. Where we sit at right now is 45, 50 feet above sea level. We are not going to have storm surge impacts here. There is no level A, B, C, D, E, F evacuation zone for Tallahassee. It's low-lying manufactured homes. That is their evacuation order. So, again, I want to give credit where credit's due. The governor's been up here talking about the mayor and the city getting much better, the county getting much better at responding to these disasters. And they have been doing yeoman's work at getting ready for what's about to happen. So they have issued their evacuation orders for low-lying and manufactured housing, which is appropriate for this particular storm. We're not going to have storm surge. We're not going to have riverine flooding up all the way into Leon County proper. So, they're doing the right thing as a local former county EM director, and as a state director now. Yes, 100%. We support their decisions on what they've done. They have opened up, I believe, 7 shelters here. They have asked the state to help supplement that, and I believe we have 3 other shelters in addition to that, ready and able to take on individuals in this area.
And the thing about, and Kevin's exactly right, you're not in a surge situation when you're talking about Leon, but, and so you don't want to tell people, hey, just evacuate willy-nilly. At the same time, individuals can look at their home, look what's around it, and assess what risk may be there, because you could have very powerful winds. You could see trees start to fall over. I mean, we had, at the governor's place, we had a really big tree there for Idalia, and Idalia was not, right now the track is closer to Tallahassee than Idalia was, and that tree fell over from that. And it didn't do structural damage to the home, but it's just, that was a massive tree. So the closer it is to Tallahassee, and the winds are 120, 125 potentially for what they're talking about, that is going to be. So you just as a resident, you look, you see, you think about, assess the risk, and there may be places, as Kevin said, you could treat it like a tornado, get in a place where you can hunker down, and maybe that's the best option for you. But it's hard to just fashion an evacuation order around that. I think you just got to trust people to make their own judgments. But debris is going to be an issue. Trees falling is going to be an issue. The more the track shifts east, the better off for Tallahassee, of course. The more that it stays on course or toggles back west, if that is possible. And it doesn't seem like that's where most of the models are tugging it right now. But, these things change. There's a lot of different factors on there that will, of course, mean more damage if it's a more westward path. But I think people can make their judgments about that. But we do have, in almost every storm, we have people that are not doing anything wrong. They're taking the storm seriously, and then a tree falls on the home and can cause fatal damage. And we've seen that. We had I think it was a young girl in the most recent, was just they weren't doing anything wrong, and it's a tragic thing, but that is a possibility, especially when you're talking about an area that has as much tree cover as Tallahassee. Okay, thanks so much.